Hey everybody, I'm Jake. I get to be the lead pastor of the Port Jervis campus, and welcome to week 6 of small groups. This week, Pastor Jarrod challenged us to suffer well. How do we engage with our suffering when life gets brutal? We want to choose to, instead of withering, we want to choose to grow. And instead of giving up, we want to choose to grow up. We want to choose to suffer well. Suffering will come our way, and it's a matter of our choice on how we want to engage with it when it comes. Jesus chose to face his suffering head on. It says this in Luke 9:51. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. Jesus knew that in Jerusalem is where he would face his greatest suffering, and he faced it head on. We do also know that Peter tried to get Jesus to avoid his suffering, and Jesus just asked him to get behind him. Jesus got Peter to get out of his way. And you see, the best thing that we could do for ourselves is to get out of our own way and choose to face our suffering head on. Do not try to avoid it. Face your suffering head on when it comes. Pastor Jarrod also mentioned that the quickest way to go through hell is to push through it or talk through it. And the people around you right now, in your small group, that's what they're there for, to talk through that suffering. Whatever it is that you're going through right now, talk about it with them. They are there for you, and you can suffer together. You do not have to suffer alone. For me, when I first moved down here, I started coming to Grace. Michelle and I were engaged at the time, and I got to know a few people on the worship team, and we got close. And what ended up happening was about a week before Michelle and I were going to get married, is she ended up in the hospital. Now, we were there. It was a week before our wedding, a lot of stress in that time, and the people that I got to know, they talked me through it. They kept in pretty constant communication, keeping me encouraged, keeping Michelle encouraged with what was going on. Someone even came out to play board games with us and hang out with us at the hospital to really encourage our hearts in that difficult time. I had just moved the area from Albany. I moved to Monroe. I had started this new job. I was working overnights. I was working there full time. I was going to school full time. I was just about to get married, and I was just getting my footing in my circumstances when Michelle ended up in the hospital. In that time, I was anxious. I didn't understand the situation. I felt powerless. I did not suffer well in that time. Michelle was in pain. I took it out on the hospital staff with my groaning towards them because of the circumstances, and I wasn't taking control of the circumstances. I wasn't suffering well in that time. And what if, instead of me withering, I chose to grow into the circumstances that I was given? What if in that moment I chose to remember that Jesus on the cross reached out and that no one reached back, so that I can know, and that we can know when we reach out, that our Heavenly Father will reach back to us and that we will not be left alone? What if in that moment I was steady and I was strong and I was patient in my suffering? What if I had an eternal perspective in that time? Would I have been able to speak to the hospital staff differently and tell them why I was able to have a hope beyond that situation that was keeping me steady, that was keeping us steady? What if I was able to be strong in that moment? And that would have encouraged Michelle and kept her from getting anxious about getting better so that in time for her wedding day. What if I suffered well and didn't try to avoid my suffering by blaming it on others or on the circumstances, but own it? So that leads us to the very first question that we're going to be going through. Is a lot of what we do in our culture is to avoid or mitigate suffering. Would you say that this is a positive thing? Does it have drawbacks? When is it appropriate to avoid suffering? I hope you have a great discussion with your group. God bless you guys.